that none of them can debate us politically.
Right.
So in the absence of being able to debate us politically, and that's the U.S. government too, that's Biden and the rest of us, they attack us with slander and other things like that. So it's, so come out and say what your real position is on colonialism, on capitalism, on socialism, on imperialism, on these kinds of things.
Okay.
Hot Take Express.
Welcome to Hot Take Express with Kent Chamberlain. I am your host, Kent Chamberlain. This is episode 14, The Backlash Crashes Ashore. So first things first, let's just address the tea. Caleb is terrified of me. Okay, like that video I released about a month ago, he replied to it, but if you go to his channel, you can't find it. I mean, now, how do I know he replied to me? Because when I search his channel, I see the title card of a video I can't find. It looks like this. Kind of like a Street Fighter-esque little title card, Caleb versus someone that looks an awful lot like me. And this is the title card of that Caleb video I made, Cyberbullying the Theater Kids. And, yeah, it's also a Street Fighter-esque title card. So that's the intro. I guess we're just rolling with that 90s fighter game theme here. So, yeah, finish him. But I just wanted to, point that out. Like, he replied to me, but he was so scared of me that he made it unlisted. So I can't find it and reply to it point by point. I think that's hilarious. Like, my whole argument is that he's keeping his real beliefs hidden from the working class. He doesn't want them to know that he supports land back and he supports the destruction of this country. He supports race nationalists' right to secede. He supports all of these things that he doesn't want to tell people about. He hides behind an American flag that he doesn't mean. My whole point is, like, you're hiding the truth, and what does he do? He hides his opinions still further. Like, he will not tell you what he thinks, and he does not want to catch an argument from little old me. And I just think that's hilarious. Now, that's not to say that he didn't say nothing about that. He dropped what I'm pretty sure is, like, the crux of his pro-land back argument, that Stalin supported the ultra-radical utopian black belt thesis of William Z. Foster. He dropped that in the O'Malley interview here.
And I guess I wanted to ask you a little bit about the black belt thesis of the Communist Party and your thoughts on that, because that was something that many people were quite surprised by to learn about in our classes, right? The idea of self-determination for the black belt region, how Stalin called for the independence of the black belt. What are your thoughts on that historically?
Now, if you go on and watch the rest of the clip, you'll see O'Malley doesn't even agree with it. So this wasn't, and I'm sure Caleb knew that. I'm sure they're all up on each other's ideology. Heck, I knew that they don't unite with the black belt thesis, because what basically their plan is to destroy America, knock over America for all its loose change, and then head to Africa and put native people and Mexican people in charge. And all the black people get deported to Africa because I guess they're literally segregationists. So that's their ideology. But anyway, so this conversation wasn't for the benefit of O'Malley or for the benefit of the CPI. This was aimed squarely at me to try to make an argument that no one less than Stalin supports the black belt, so you're wrong, and also to be well, see, you don't have to agree with everything William Z. Foster thinks. The Uhurus don't. Yeah, the Uhurus are even more extreme. That's not really an argument, but so I need to break down this argument because it's wrong, and it's really wrong. But yeah, I also just find it funny that he's like still. I got under his skin, man. Like, he knows he's wrong, and it's just eating him up inside. But so he's like always got to put these little quips out, like MAGA communism isn't strategic, or says the black belt guy, or whatever. Like, he mad son, but he's too scared to debate me. So anyway, why is the black belt thesis wrong, and why does it not matter that Stalin endorsed it? First off, Eurasian statehood is different than New World statehood. In the old world, you've got the ethnos as the basis of the state. Your father was a Russian, and your grandfather was a Russian, and his father before him was a Russian, etc., etc., and therefore you have the same blood, so you're a Russian. That's not how it works in America. America is not based on an ethnos. It's based on an ethos. It's based on an idea, an ethic. And that ethic is the Constitution. And those who want to say that, well, that's cringe, and, we should all be like Eurasia. Well, Eurasia, as a institutional region, was founded by Genghis Khan and his Yasa, which is basically the Mongol constitution. It's lost to us now, but we know little bits and pieces of it that survived long after the Mongols fell. Like, even in the Age of Timur, better known as Tamerlane, they were still following the Yasa of Genghis Khan. Constitutions mean something to us because they're here in the New World, because they're the encapsulation of the national idea. And and also you can see how this works with how immigration works not immigration, citizenship. In the old world, you get were born of a British parent, you are a British citizen. They don't call it a subject of their majesty anymore. But I think not since the 70s, but yeah, you're a British citizen. Now, if you were born of an American, you're an American citizen. But also, if your mother is Spanish and your father is Vietnamese, but they happen to have the kid here in an American hospital, that kid is American, because we don't care where you're from. Your ethnos does not matter to us. Do you agree with the American ideal of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, or not? If you do, you can be an American, and if you don't, you can't. And this means, we don't, this whole, ethnic, race, just the fact that, everything's divided into black and white and brown and red and yellow, this is how Americans talk about race, because we don't care. There's no ancient hatreds with any other country like they have in the Balkans. The people that did the most damage to us were probably the Canadians, but they're our best friends. They burned down the White House, and we've got a free trade area with them. So there is no American nationalism is about the ethos of America. It's about that life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. It's not about the American blood and soil and the that thing. The people that talk like that are generally old-timey white supremacists, and white supremacists don't even really talk like that anymore. So without our imagined nationalities here are all based on color, because we can't base it on ethnicity. It's all based on, what do you look like? Are you red, yellow, brown? Blah, blah, blah. And that is just so silly. It's sorting based on eye color, and it's just such a spurious concept. And I don't care if Marcus Garvey thought it was cool, but you don't base an ethnicity off of that. We're all one American people. Now, to use some shitlib jargon here, nationality is what's called a social construct. If we all felt like it, we could probably become like Eurasia. We could turn this place into Eurasia. But do you really want to be the Balkans? Okay, like, do you really want to have ethnic hatreds? Because that's what happens when you turn America into an ethnicity. All right, that's what happens when you turn white into an ethnicity. That's what happens when you turn black into an ethnicity. You get violence, and who wins that violence? The biggest and most organized ethnicity. If you want a pogrom of everyone who isn't white, keep this land back crap up. I mean, like, I don't want that pogrom. I taught kids on the Lakota res, and I don't want anything to happen to them because, like, some ultra radicals started a race war. Like, it boils my blood and it terrifies me at the same time. And just because, like, the Uhurus are marginal now doesn't mean that they always will be. These ideas are poison. Like, okay, also, you know, to go way back into, like, Antifa theory, like, back when Antifa didn't suck and they weren't Nazis, you know, Hitler said something like, you know, you stop it. The only way we could have been stopped is if, like, our movement was crushed in its cradle. So, like, just because, like, Nazis are weak now, and a Nazi is a national socialist, so, like, a nationalist who also, you know, at least theoretically claims to believe in socialism. But Hitler was using that as a ruse, and he admitted it in his writings. Like, he didn't really believe in socialism. He didn't, you know, seize any means. He was in bed with the German capitalists, so he wasn't a socialist, but he claimed to be. And so you have to crush the National Socialists of every era, the fascists of every era, in the cradle. And just because they're not powerful now doesn't mean they won't always be powerful. So, like, that's, like, I'm not. If Uhurus want to think of it this way, it's almost like a compliment. It's like, they are a worthy opponent worth being afraid of, because, like, their stuff is crazy, but it still might happen one day. You know, crazier things have happened, but it flies in the face of New World ethnicity. And also, I just need to say, like, this New World ethnic understanding predates 1492, okay? Like, if you go to Teotihuacan, you go to Tenochtitlan, you go to, like, Uxmal, you have, like, all these different cities in Mesoamerica, modern Mexico. Some of them Aztec, some of them Mayan, some of them, you know, like, predating that, like, Tolan, I think. And, yeah, Teotihuacan. But, like, all of these cities were, like, deeply multicultural. There were, like, and, like, the Mayans and the Aztecs and the Zapotecs and, you know, everyone in between were influencing each other. You see, like, the art styles in the Mayan, some Mayan cities change after, like, an Aztec conquest that like, puts their preferred leader of, you know, I want to say Palenque. Maybe it was Uxmal, I don't know, but, like, on the throne. And you see, like, every city has, like, these quarters for what we, you know, something comparable to, like, Little Italy or Chinatown. You know, like, even though it's, like, a Mayan city, that you know, part of the city has recognizably Aztec architectural features and Aztec trade goods and so forth, and you get the impression that's where the local Aztecs of this city lived. And so you see, like, ethnicity on if you want to make the argument that, like, in, you know, natives and Mexicans are the only ones that deserve sovereignty here. Well, natives and Mexicans don't think of ethnicity like the Uhurus do. Natives and Mexicans agree with the American outlook in this, where you know, it was the ethos of these states that drove them, not the ethnos of anything. So Stalin was not an American. So he didn't understand that. But also, like, it's not just that there's differences between Eurasia and America. It's like, because, like, Lenin's take on the national question isn't just wrong for America. Oh, and I should add, Lenin basically outsourced his take on the national question to Stalin. So it's both their take. Yeah, and he did that because, you know, Stalin was the token minority as the Georgian in a room full of Russians. So it's the same thing as, like, say, giving a Supreme Court seat to Clarence Thomas because, like, well, we don't have a whole lot of black Republican jurists, so let's go with the only one we can so we don't look like the racists that the Democrats are calling us. It's that kind of idea that motivated Stalin's placement on determining that question. It was one of the first political tasks of his life, and he messed it up. So, or I should say one of the first very important political tasks. He messed it up so bad that it would eventually destroy the USSR. And that's why the Russian nationalist right, which includes Putin, by the way, that descends from Stalin, they reject this line now. They consider it, ultra-radical and utopian, like I do. And Putin launched the SMO with against Ukraine with like a speech about it, like explaining why Stalin and Lenin were wrong on the national question. So I stand with Russia, and these people have had more experience than anyone else on earth with Stalin's line on the national question, and they thoroughly reject it. And I think ignoring that experience is undialectical, because Marxism-Leninism is a science, not a dogma. So really, Caleb is being dogmatic here and not adjusting his political outlook with real-world data that proves him wrong. Lenin's line was formulated out of Eurasian conditions, and even in Eurasian conditions, it doesn't work. Okay, so why would you want it to apply it here? But yeah, so he didn't really understand his own material conditions at the time on this question, but he definitely didn't understand American material conditions, because before he dissolved the Comintern, when he realized this was a bad idea, he wanted all Comintern parties to foment revolution against their governments, assuming they were in capitalist countries. This didn't work out so well when he needed America and France and Britain as allies against Hitler. So it's how do you ally with a government that you're also trying to overthrow? So that's when the Comintern got disbanded. He expected that just because that's how it worked in Soviet Russia. They organized to overthrow the Tsar, that's how it would work everywhere. But so Tsarist Russia was a bourgeois autocracy, and most of the countries of the West, and definitely the United States of America, is a bourgeois democracy. It works different. Karl Kautsky, and the reason no one really heard of this theory is because it was written by Karl Kautsky, and he was rightly derided for being wrong about pretty much everything by both Marx and Lenin, because he lived kind of between both of them. And he was right about this, because he was writing in a Western context. He was all about that second international social democrat sellout and be reformist energy. But because he was able to notice things about bourgeois democracy that the people in Russia weren't noticing. That you don't overthrow a bourgeois democracy yourself. You get elected on a minimum platform, like Lincoln or Chavez or the Sandinistas or whoever, and then the bourgeoisie try to overthrow the government, and they can succeed like they did in Chile with Salvador Allende, but usually they fail. And because at that point, when they've put themselves beyond the protections of bourgeois democracy, the workers can rally and organize more effectively and defeat them. So Karl Kautsky termed this concept the slaveholder revolt, because his, Chavez and the Sandinistas, etc., hadn't happened yet. And so his only real case study was the United States under Lincoln. And so, it was literally a slaveholder revolt here. So that's the term he used. But yeah, the national question matters. And current events that I'm going to explain get to why it matters. Because, they it's taken very seriously by your average American worker, and it's not taken very seriously by your average middle-class academic American. However, now, I can't pretend that the radical Republicans are a very large org. Like, our allies are very large. Like, Blacks for Trump speaks for more black people than the Uhurus do, but the radical Republicans ourselves is not a big org. We're encouraging collectivization and, real world activism like that. And we're encouraging the proliferation of ideas because we believe that in the last Civil War era, our greatest contribution to the Republican coalition will be our ideas. They might not even want to implement them, but they will be driven eventually by necessity to do so, because the only alternative will be shit liberty. But even given our very tiny reach, I mean, we are assembling a coalition. Look, because we have 20-ish allies in Congress and the Freedom Caucus, and near the Freedom Caucus, people like Marjorie Taylor Greene that were kicked out. All the same, 20-ish allies in Congress blocked Israel aid for 6 months, despite a vast majority of both Democrats and Republicans in favor of it. I mean, it still grinds my gears that it got through, but we fought valiantly. We fought like lions, and we gave Russia and we gave Gaza 6 months of as much of a reprieve as we could. Russia was able to use that to organize to take Avdiivka and places like that, and to start a offensive. Gaza didn't. And because Joe Biden just acted illegally and sent Israel weapons unconstitutionally without Congress's approval. And I mean, if the president breaks the law, that's not our fault. And we're doing everything we can to stop that. So if he's going to break the law, I mean, I think that should be one of the many things held against him. But yeah, even though that sellout Mike Johnson that no one heard of until he basically sold us out to the deep state, even though he got this stuff to all pass, we made opposition to Ukraine a majority position among Republican congressmen anyway. It was kind of down the middle, but we had a slight majority of Republicans in favor of not giving Ukraine a dang cent. So, the tide is changing. And, even though we lost on Israel, we're still fighting for every single margin. We're fighting a rearguard action even though we lost. And the rearguard action is having an effect. Allies in the Senate are stripping out anti-free speech parts of the Zionism bill, which isn't, it's not as much as we'd like, but hey, it limits the damage, to help protect the Constitution and the First Amendment. A majority of Republicans, the voters themselves, not the politicians, they want a ceasefire. Even though I'd say a majority of Republicans are aesthetically and theoretically Zionist, no one likes seeing dead kids on television. And even Trump's had to talk kind of squeamish about it. He calls himself a Zionist, but I mean, he's Biden said, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black. And he's done nothing for black people. Well, Trump said, if you don't, effectively, not literally word for word, but effectively, he said, if you don't vote for me, you ain't Jewish. And so now Biden can't get a lot of the Zionist voters that used to vote Democrat. A lot of them are coming over to vote for Trump because he's aesthetically Zionist. But Biden is also a Zionist and will not give the Gaza protesters what they want. So he's going to lose, and he's going to go down in flames in this election. And, but Trump knows that even though he's aesthetically Zionist, he's supporting the existence of Israel as a state. And no, that might not be ideal, but honestly, just anyone that can get this blood bleeding to end, anyone that can get this genocide to end is, much better than Genocide Joe, which the MAGA base was chanting at a recent rally, and he was like, "They're not wrong," and they're not wrong. But and like the fact that he's had like these statements and he's sounded very iffy about like the continuing aggression. I mean, he's taken the money of like Zionist mega donors, and I think that's what motivated some of his more aggressive language recently, is because he really needs money because of all this lawfare. But like he's gonna stiff them like he stiffed all his contractors. I'm pretty sure he's gonna be the Zionist that ever Zioned, and like rhetorically, and then once he's elected, he's gonna be like moving an embassy and then not going to war with Iran when Bibi wants. So, Israel is having to change how it views the American alliance because of Trump more so than Biden. Biden is starting to slow walk a couple of the arms shipments, but that's about it. Whereas Trump's rhetorical change is actually making them rethink our relationship. But yeah, so anyway, that's a majority of Democrat voters that want a ceasefire. A majority of Republican voters want a ceasefire. A majority of independent voters want a ceasefire. So why isn't there a ceasefire? And why are the protests on campuses like that are protesting for a ceasefire, why are they being counter-protested? And the counter-protests appear to be highly popular. Why is that? And not only that, the counter-protests are led by frat boys, who I didn't really expect to lead the Cultural Revolution, but class analysis explains both. Neither frat boys nor the students that started the Cultural Revolution expected to have like cushy careers in middle-class academia. So the kind of like more closer to the working class that just happened to be in college than middle-class academia. And like these Gaza campus protesters are going about it all wrong. Like they're making the most offensive and counterproductive arguments they can to the American people to for Gaza. They're actually making the cause of Gaza less popular by their actions. So another thing I'd like to point out about these counter-protesters, I see a lot of American flags. I don't see a lot of Israeli flags. In fact, I don't see any Israeli flags. So clearly, this isn't about Gaza. This isn't. These counter protests aren't happening because like all those frat boys really love them some Israel. No, this is over the arrogance of middle class academia. Statistically, many of these counter protesters also support a ceasefire. I mean, just the odds are, like, if like half the country feels a way about something, a big crowd like that is going to have at least a decent chunk of it that feels a way about that too. So, like, what motivates this? I mean, like, to a degree, like, it's the same charge you can level at all protests. It's like workers, well, at least all protests that are civil disobedience. Workers can't afford to break the law on other people's property over politics. And the point of civil disobedience is I'm breaking the law, so arrest me, because I need to make a point. And this point is so important that it's worth me losing my civil liberties over it. And that's fine. There's a grand tradition of civil disobedience, especially with the civil rights movement. But like, Rosa Parks knew she was getting arrested, okay? Like, they weren't surprised when, the Bull Connors stepped in. Like, these counter-protesters feel like they have a right to do this, a God-given right to do this, and it just doesn't... And they think that because the suffering of Gaza is tremendous, that they personally are the ones that have the right to do something about it, and that they personally have the right to violate other people's property rights and other people's safety because of this. Because also, like, there's the case of those janitors, I want to say in Columbia University, I could be wrong. But some janitors were assaulted by Gaza protesters, and that's not cool. It's a legitimate demand of any union to have its members have a safe working environment. So I think if they're starting to beat up janitors, actual workers that haven't done anything to them, that's an issue. Okay, so like that's something that's going to offend the working class very obviously, but it's just also the way they couch these arguments, because they're couching them in, well, like, Israel's a settler colonial state, so it's legitimate to drive them into the sea, and like this is what decolonization looks like, was like one particular land back route take that I found disgusting. Like, they're making themselves as unpopular as possible. Like, I don't love Hamas, and why I don't love Hamas is because they're a land back-root cat's paw of the Israeli Mossad that was installed in power by Bibi and George W. Bush to basically make sure that Israel would never have a partner for peace, and they'd always have that propaganda line to use against basic Palestinian dignity, sovereignty, and civil rights. Honestly, the most effective line I've seen pushed among the American people is, why are you spending my tax dollars on healthcare for Israel? Why are you spending my tax dollars on bombing other people's countries? Like, even if people don't care about that other country, or they don't know enough history to know why they should care, like, they care about their tax dollars. They care about the money leaving their pocket. Like, I mean, if someone does the right thing for wrong reasons, that's still them doing the right thing. Like, we need people to be opposed to this war. It's not hard. Whereas these protesters seem to be going out of their way to gin up support for Israel in some weird, grotesque way. Like, the Democrat coalition is like people who performatively hate Israel but are functionally just as Zionist as their boomer parents, who are still like, yay, greatest ally. So yeah, no wonder the workers hate that. So why is there proletarian support for a crackdown against the campus protests? I think we just figured that out. But yeah, like, I feel like there's some shades of 1968 here. There's going to be a Democrat convention in Chicago if they don't move it online, which I heard they might do. But yeah, it's like, it feels like these could become the hard hat riots, our era's version of the hard hat riots, where like student protesters were just like, and other assorted hippies protesting Vietnam were descended on by the workers. And like, I support the struggle of the Vietnamese people, but I also understand why my own people found those people, the hippies, irritating and repulsive. Like, academic class arrogance makes even righteous causes repulsive to workers. And by alienating American patriots, who they don't need to alienate if they just don't talk like the way they're talking, if they just didn't do that, they would find that their causes would succeed. But I think there's at least a strata in the leadership of a lot of these campus protest movements that don't want them to succeed, that are being this obnoxious on purpose, because, like, maybe there might be deep state in here. This might be part of a psyop meant to, like, justify Zionism, for all I know. Like, I don't know. So why do the counter protests emphasize American patriotism? Well, because they're offended by these land back root notions that the campus protesters are pushing. And yeah, like, both Hamas and the Likudnik Zionist state that gave it power are land back roots. So, like, cheering... Okay, so there's a difference between, like, cheering on the safety and security and civil rights and sovereignty of the Palestinian people and cheering on Hamas. Well, like I said, Hamas are land back roots. They're terrorists. Literally terrorists. I mean, like, I'm not sorry. That is just, I'm just calling a spade a spade. What they did on October 7th was terrorism. Like, you want to talk about lines Lenin had? Like, the line against adventurism and terrorism was one. And, like, that's why Hamas was installed by the Likudniks, is because they wanted this effect. But, like, they're all land back rows, and because the Likud wanted, and Mossad, they wanted this to happen so that they could steal Palestinian land without anyone complaining, because, hey, we tried to negotiate, but we have no partner for peace, you know? So, like, the multicultural American working class has dignity and will not accept land backroot insults. And if organizations like the CPI care about Gaza, they will make a patriotic case for Gaza to the American people instead of land backroot one about, like, yay Hamas, you know, Hamas did nothing wrong. America's a settler colonial state like Israel and both deserve to die. Like, you know, don't do that. That doesn't work. Talk about your taxes going up to pay for socialist healthcare in Israel. That works. Believe me, that works. Yeah, I mean, like, I even the neocons, I haven't yet to see a single neocon, like, rebut that one. They can't. But yeah, so let's talk about what my org did. Within the month of October, once this broke out, like, the radical Republicans, we agreed and organized a statement opposing the Gaza war. But we never, ever supported these campus protests, and that was for a reason, okay? Because, like, we are with the American people. We're on their side, and we're not going to, like, join in attacks on the American people. And because, like, we know that's bad praxis, and we've always known that's bad praxis. It's simple. People who call themselves socialists or communists, but they believe in this land back crap, or at least, you know, Stalin's take on the national question. If they talk to us, and the working class, like O'Malley talked to Tucker, and not like Johan and the other land backroots talked to me, they would have a lot more success and they would find a lot more allies. Like, if they'd promised the radical Republicans no land back chance with us at a rally, you know, at Rage Against the War Machine, we would have gone. But they had just done this in Chicago, and they had not bent at all, like, no compromise whatsoever. They released a video. Caleb released a video implying that Marxist-Lincolnists were mentally ill, as a way to, like, well, you know, we know everyone's a little crazy at these times, so, you know, like, we should all try to, you know, just the most patronizing crap. Like, so they had given us no reason to suspect good faith from them. And so we weren't going to go to send officers to be at a rally where literal treason was being advocated. It wasn't, they couldn't make that tiny concession. Because they're so arrogant. They think they know better than everyone else. Because Stalin said something, you know, the holy dogma must be upheld. You know, like, their arrogance impedes their anti-imperialism. However, because we opposed, the radical Republicans opposed their lines and their arrogance, it taught the Uhurus, at least, not to bring up land back on Tucker and then ask for help. I noticed, O'Malley was very, very polite. Invited Tucker over for dinner and, you know, thanked him for letting him be on his show. And, you know, and he didn't say, you know, the FBI should prosecute Trump. He said, well, I'm not a Trump guy. Okay, you know, that's fine. I'm not, like, mortally offended if you're not a Trump voter, okay? Like, but when you're threatening to destroy my country and, like, to take down the only guy who can just fire the CIA in my lifetime, I'm going to have a problem with that. So, you know, O'Malley didn't do that because apparently he's starting to learn that his angry black nationalist shtick doesn't work with us. And if you want conservatives and the conservative working class helping you out, and people who are trying to appeal to such people to help you out, you shouldn't be pushing those lines. You shouldn't be, you know, like, the first thing I ever really saw about the Uhurus was them, like, you know, chanting land back. Like, what the hell kind of an introduction is that? Like, you spit in my face and then expect me to help you? Like, no. So, like, because we stood up and did the right thing and, you know, lost all these opportunities because of it, you know, Caleb and the Uhurus were forced to reassess, and like they can say I'm wrong all they want, they can laugh, react, and all that shit, but you know what? They're still adjusting their praxis based on what I'm telling them, because I'm just telling them how reality works, and they will be where I'm at eventually, whether they like it or not, or they will be out and out Nazis when the shooting starts. It's gonna be one of those two things. So yeah, like speaking of people who claim to care about Gaza not helping, the Houthis sunk the Andromeda Star, which is a Russian ship. It went down with all hands. The Houthis had just months ago agreed not to attack Russian ships to Putin's face. I don't want to put too much of a fine point on this because, like, they are taking action against Gaza, and I've had, like, a lot of issues with them, but, like, this is really just the straw that breaks the camel's back here. So I'm going to explain why my critical support for the Houthis, but equal emphasis on the critical and the support. All right, no one else is fighting for Gaza or doing anything on Gaza's behalf. I mean, not militarily. The Houthis are, and Iran defended itself against that Israeli attack. But like, all accept help from just about anyone, even the Houthis, if they're gonna fight for the right cause. But like, I was leery about them for a while. But like the Houthis themselves have been an opportunistic org. If you look at them, their history, like they got their start in a revolution against Abdullah Ali Saleh, the former president of Yemen, but then they later joined a coalition government with him. So people died for no reason, I guess, because like at the end of the day, Saleh was still like in charge, and the Houthis were fine. They just really wanted their little cut of the power, I guess. And honestly, I think why they're doing the support for Gaza is because they want the clout. No one else is, and they have no ties with the West or any of the countries sending shipping through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. So they have nothing to lose by just shooting at those ships and saying that there's brave and noble. And by and large, it's working. But they're no John Browns, okay? Like, John Brown didn't sink a Russian ship, an innocent, anti-imperialist Russian ship for the clout, okay? These Houthis are Leroy Jenkins-ass adventurists, as are most modern Shiite orgs. And now we're going to explain the issue with Shia politics. So Shia is based on like support for a dude named Ali, and he was martyred by his political opponents and is the political model of his political opponents, by the way, were the guys that would end up developing into the Sunni branch of Islam. But yeah, like, he was martyred by his political opponents, and if you are a Shiite, Ali is your political model. You pray for martyrdom, that you crave it. So your praxis ends up being ultra-radical, bloodthirsty, adventurous, terroristic. Because, most people would be dissuaded from that. Well, like, I might die. But they're like, yeah, I might die, like, and I'll go straight to heaven because this is a righteous cause, and I'll be like Ali, And like I mentioned before, something Lenin wasn't wrong about is his rejection of terrorism. And so when they weren't killing Filipino sailors, Houthi praxis was justifiable. Like, early on, like, some of the ships they were sinking, they weren't even sinking ships. Their attacks were easily deflected, but they were having a massive effect just doing that because it raised the cost of shipping insurance through the Bab el-Mandeb. And so a lot of shipping was redirected around the Horn of Africa, which added a lot of cost to world shipping and was therefore kind of being a successful blockade. And they promised they weren't going to attack Russian or Chinese ships to Putin and Xi's face, like I mentioned, and it seemed like that was all going to be fine. Like, just by shooting a couple missiles and drone attacks risks that were easily deflected, they could raise the cost of insurance enough to be prohibitive, and that's fine. But like, now let's also examine the realities of the shipping world, like how it works on an economic basis. Most ships are flagged at convenience. Like American owned ships aren't usually American flagged. They're flagged in Panama or Liberia or some other place that doesn't make them pay taxes. And they don't employ first world crews. They employ crews from like the Philippines. Filipinos are not oppressing anyone. Filipinos are not Zionists. If a Filipino is working on an Israeli owned ship, it is not because they think Zionism is cool. All right, they're trying to feed their families. It's just that. And like, that was really just one of my issues. It's like, so long as nobody dies if they're doing this, I'm fine. But like, you start killing innocent people, and you're the Zionist writ small, but getting writ a little bit larger with every death, right? With every death of an innocent. And like, that was bad enough. But you could still make the argument, well, the Filipinos should have realized if they were signing on with like an Israeli-owned ship that this could happen to them. Okay, maybe. But then what happens if it's an anti-imperialist ship like the Andromeda Star that's owned by the Russians? This could have totally been avoided, all right? Like, if they had bothered to maintain an up-to-date shipping registry, they could have avoided this. Like, it was laziness and Leroy Jenkins-ass adventurism that caused them to kill innocent people, innocent Russians or whoever the Russians were hiring. Like, attacking anti-imperialist shipping is absolutely unacceptable. They had better rein this in. This is we want the liberation of Gaza, but like, not, you don't end Zionism by being Zionism, okay? And like, furthermore, I'm not saying anything radical here, except for inside the communist bubble, right? Like, most people seeing this are like, yeah, I want a ceasefire in Gaza. Because remember, that's a majority position across like all major demographics of America, right? Most people want a ceasefire, but like, the Houthis still aren't popular either, right? Even though they're on the side of Gaza. Because everyone sees their praxis and they're like, I don't know about that. So, final thoughts. It's possible for American patriots and anti-imperialists to get along, but the academics have to shed their class arrogance, and they have to treat patriotic workers as social equals, not like slow learners or like, oh, they're not advanced enough to understand the black belt thesis, or no, like, they're backward and they're just only starting to get in the struggle because they don't agree with us on land back. No, we understand just fine, and we reject what you're saying. That's the issue. Accept that. Stop looking down on us and accept that there are just good people who don't agree with what you're saying, and that's that. And if these middle class academics truly care about anti-imperialism, they will join the radical Republicans in doing this. Because workers acting in class self-defense against arrogant academics, as they did at Ole Miss, are justified. And functional anti-imperialism must appeal to workers as they truly are if it hopes to succeed. Because, again, America isn't going to be invaded. That's not how American imperialism is going to end. We have, like, the biggest moats in history, all right? And we, like, hundreds of millions of like rednecks and pickup trucks with guns. You will not invade us. American imperialism ends when those rednecks and pickup trucks decide it needs to end. And that's who you need to be talking to. That's who you need to be treating with dignity. That's who you need to not be spitting in the face of with these land backroom Stalin take on the national question ass culture war silliness. Anyway, now you know, and knowing is half the battle.
Take Express.
Oh, yeah. 2 more things. Okay, so if you're going to like be a middle class academic and like look your nose down at the working dumbs of America for not knowing our history, maybe you should know your history. Okay, you're gonna tell us how this country is all evil and stuff, but you don't even know the history of places that like the Uhurus organize in.
First of all, just to be historically factual, the Second Amendment was not something that was written for me or black people. I mean, the fact is that the law that governed most of the relationship for the longest period of time was something that came out of 1857 Supreme Court ruling around Dred Scott, which was right here in St. Louis, where the court ruled that black man had no rights that a white man had to respect. This is when Dred Scott fought that getting to St. Louis, which was supposed to have been a no-slave state, would mean that he was free after leaving a place where he had been enslaved. The court said no.
All right, Missouri was a slave state, not a free state. It was a slave state. Illinois, where Abraham Lincoln was practicing law when the Dred Scott decision came down, that was a free state. If they could get to East St. Louis, Illinois, they were free, in theory, until the Dred Scott decision happened. But then, like within a decade of the Dred Scott decision coming down, Lincoln had arrested the Supreme Court judge that had issued that ruling, and armies of hundreds of thousands of radical Republicans were busy freeing the South. And the state of Missouri, in particular, was the scene of like probably the most communism in American history. Like the slave owners were lynched by radical Republicans in the streets of St. Louis. Nathaniel Lyon he wasn't a communist, but his commanding officers were. He led a seizure of the federal arsenal in St. Louis, so the Confederates couldn't get it. And yeah, like after the pro-Confederates were lynched, their slaves were freed and given some of their property.
Just a little bit of history, people would be able to see that more effectively if they're not locked into these imagined borders that were created by European colonizers that didn't exist before then. I mean, I'm in Missouri now, and Missouri, as you know, was part of the so-called Missouri Compromise, where they stole a third or more of this territory called the United States, and all the people who were in it they now owned by Jefferson, by the United States, so they could extend slavery here, and it was owned prior to that by France.
Also, the Missouri Compromise was not the Louisiana Purchase. The Louisiana Purchase happened in 1803 when Thomas Jefferson bought French Louisiana from Napoleon. Okay, and then the Missouri Compromise happened in 1820 when the North agreed that Missouri could be admitted as a slave state if the South agreed that Maine could be separated from Massachusetts, which it had been a part of up till then, and incorporated as a free state to maintain the balance between free and slave, back when the parties were still trying to ignore the slave question. So that's what history actually is. Feel free to look it up. I don't expect any of you to believe me. But second thing, okay, where was it? Oh yeah. Okay, so my socialist org never got $80,000 from the United States government. Well, and you know what? We aren't trying to overthrow the United States government. Here, check it out.
I think we got something like $80,000 or more dollars grant from the the FDA, to create and operate a farmers market there, which is one of the most effective farmers markets that they say that's happening in the country.
That's right. The Uhurus got $80,000 from the FDA, which is part of the constitutional government. So the legitimate non-deep state part that we want to keep, but they still got a bunch of money from this hand that they're biting. So clearly, they already understand how to work in peace and harmony with the United States government. I don't understand why they have to have this superiority complex about, oh, we're so much better than these Americans and, you know, all this crap if they're taking money from the U.S. government. Like, come on. I think farmers markets are cool too, and Tobar Collective is going to be participating in one once I get this greenhouse built. But like, we aren't getting $80,000 for that. Like, and you know, the government doesn't have to pay us to not try to overthrow them. You know, again, this screams psyop to me. I feel more justified than ever saying this is a psyop. Plus, it's not just America. Okay, like, who is the country that colonized more of the world other than Britain? Spain! Yeah! And guess who gives the Uhurus money? Spain! Check it out.
The sponsors of this thing, even though it was an NGO, there were forces who came from the United Nations who were part of this. There were people from different countries who were part of this. And Spain, they paid for 3 people to come, 1 from Europe, 2 of us from the United States, and they paid a stipend for us to get there.
So, yeah, there you have it. And I'll tell you how this works. There's like a class of non-whites that are that they know how to navigate this like New Deal bureaucracy and pull money out of it, and like they get funding for all kinds of crap that like no one really keeps track of. And so and they're like, they kind of form a bourgeoisie of like non-whites, and or at least an academic middle class. I think that's probably more apt. It's not really a bourgeoisie. But like, so when I call like Uhurus the academic middle class, when I call the CPI the academic middle, this is why the government is paying them to do this on some level. Like, now and then, like the deep state turns around and is like, you know, like tries to pass some charges on them about like anti-imperialism is thought crime. But like, honestly, I think it's just to popularize these land back rule lines to make sure that the American working class never takes action against American imperialism. Like, how can you justify taking money from like the American government otherwise? And also, like, I don't want to hear anything about reparations. You already got $80,000 of reparations. The U.S. government isn't funding my socialist organization. There's your reparations, all right? Like, I didn't own slaves. My ancestor was General Meade, the commander at Gettysburg. We did nothing but bleed for black liberty, all right? We don't owe you reparations. And like, Frank, we owe you solidarity if you are in solidarity with us, but like piss on America and you kiss that goodbye. So there you have it. Like, I will forever fight for black Americans to have the modern equivalent of 40 acres and a mule, just as I will fight for every other American to have the equivalent of that, you know, the modern equivalent of that. I believe in equality. I believe in that this country was its best ideals are an attempt to live up to equality, and I believe in the working class of all nations. And like, I will fight, and my ancestors have fought for the liberty of black people. But like, what we will not do is fight for black separatists, or, you know, like a black belt, or we will not allow the United States to be dismembered by like Nazi extremists of any color. All right. So anyway, I'm done for real. I just forgot that was that's the thing they said, and I had to mention it. Sorry. Okay, this video is long enough.